I want people to know what governments are really like, how evil they are. No matter how nice the suit is, no matter how well tied the tie is, no matter how well shaven the man, no matter how nicely they speak, some of them are absolute villains. And we found the emails. And here is, I actually have the emails. You'll never believe it. Gordon Brown, the prime minister at the time, actually wrote an email in England to one of his stooges, one of his puppets, and said, I'm going to paraphrase now, that we have to banish Michael Savage to balance the list. Do you know what that means? Because they had banned vicious Muslims who called for the overthrow of England, they wanted to make it look as though they were balanced, so they banned an American conservative. Would you believe this? Well, you better believe it. I have the emails to prove it. And I want to remind you that when that happened, the very same thing that's happening to Pamela Geller happened to me. Nobody came to my aid. The very same forces on Fox News that are attacking Geller basically ignored me or attacked me. The very same silence you hear from Rush Limbaugh and the cartel is what I got. So, in the age of cheap talk show hosts with widely accessible audiences, you pay for what you get. Let's put it to you that way. And that's it. That's the story. I mean, up until 2009, I wrote this. I wrote that I've been leading a fairly charmed life. It said, I've led somewhat of a life of charm until now with a few bumps. I finally hit a stone wall, the old cracked but never breaking stone walls of monarchic England. Our original oppressive ruler, now quasi-Marxist do-gooders, fearing for their lives, pick on the innocent to protect the liberty of the guilty. Overrun by the insanity of their own policies of ultra-tolerance, they choose intolerance as a quick defense. The once proud British of Churchill, the victors of the Battle of Britain, where so many flowers of Cambridge and Oxford nobly sacrificed their lives, now reduced to broken flower pots of people ruling Britannia. Overrun by people who hate them, hate their race, hate their whiteness, the broken shards of England choose to condemn an American patriot, a man who speaks of borders, of language, of culture. He is the enemy of the shards of England's pride. He is now the sum total of all that threatens the island's survival. This free spirit ensnared by the descendants of those bold Norsemen now fallen, their clay feet crumbling. Although the news story in blaring headlines was that Michael Savage, talk show host, was banned in Britain, the subtext was really this, quote, Michael Savage, nationalist and patriot, banned from the globalist system. The rationalization provided for the ban was nothing more than a collection of sound bites taken out of context. They were used to put me in league with murderers and terrorists in order to castigate me and make me appear to be a genuinely bad guy. The fact of the matter is that this is a subterfuge by globalist power players to make sure that any true nationalist, even a nonviolent nationalist, is criminalized. That's how I began this self-published book, banned in Britain, which I'm not selling to you, by the way, which I published in 2009 as Savage Productions book, in order to set the record straight. And those missing emails from Gordon Brown and the others in that vile Labour government can be found in there. Maybe you can learn something from it. So there it is. That's the show we've been covering so far. If you'd like to talk about these topics or any other related topics, trade agreements, you name it, the phone number is 855-400-7282. This is Hour 3. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
My Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust to protect my wealth with gold and silver. Call 800-BUYCOIN. It is the Savage Nation. As you know, I am a student of history, and I know many of you have a beef with Aryans, but did you know that there was Aryan beef? One of the magazines I just bought today was called World War II and about Germany being crushed. So I was flipping through the magazine before the show today, and I found this little column, Aryan Beef Found Too Bullish to Bother With. Besides a race of Aryan supermen, Nazis wanted super cows too, I read. In the 1920s, German zoologist Heinz and Lutz Heck sought to resurrect the auroch, a wild species the Teutons mentioned in their legends. Crossbreeding domestic cattle, the brothers Heck arrived at what modern farmer then called a reasonable facsimile of the ancient genetic line. Nazi leaders prized the shaggy longhorn beasts as meaty examples of German might and scientific acumen. The strain of modernist pseudo-aurochs survived the Third Reich, and in 2009, British farmer Derek Gow imported a few to raise on his Devon farm. Not commercially, but to study and photograph. Well, the beasts proved hard to manage. Many of the big ruminants would just attack you any chance they got, the farmer said. They would try to kill anyone who came near them. Well, after tolerating several years of bad behavior by the ill-tempered behemoths, a specimen can weigh in at 1,900 pounds. Farmer Gow slaughtered 7 of the 13 animals. One byproduct, the cattleman noted, was an inventory of very tasty sausage. And that, Robert, is the story of Aryan beef. Just to show you that there's many different ways to skin the cat talking about World War II. There are so many facets that you can't even imagine them, because that's what history is all about, is finding the facets that you don't know. And one day, if we survive this regime, people will look back and say, how did the people not rise up? The man was naked about his intentions to ensnare them and enslave them. The man was nakedly permitting the enemy to run rampant in the country, and how did so many millions of American men permit him to get away with it, they will ask. How did they not ask the FBI that if they know that there are Islamists in 50 states threatening to kill and maim and blow things up, they don't arrest them preemptively and take them off the street? They'll ask, how is that possible? They will ask, how could a ragtag army without an air force, without a navy, be gaining so much territory against the most powerful military on earth? That's what people will ask if we survive the devil in the White House. Because there's no one else to blame. It's him. It's all coming from him. All of it's coming from him. All of it's coming from him. A fish rots from the head down. In England, when the parties lost, the leaders of those parties just resigned immediately. Did you hear the resignation speeches? The Millichamp we played. Labour Party's Ed Miliband, rather, resigned immediately upon losing. The head of the UKIP party resigned. Farage resigned immediately for losing. In America, the loser, Obama, who wrecked his own legacy, is that of deceiving the American people. And the American people went to the polls in record numbers and said, we say no to this. They said no to the labor view, the communist view, the socialist view, whatever you want to call it. We voted against him and his party, and we voted against his policies. And what happened the next day? He mocked us. Do you remember this humble man looked at us and sneered at us? And he doubled down and he said, screw you, basically. I'll do what I want. And look what he's done since then. And history will say, how did they let him do it? How did they let a so-called opposition party not stop him? How did the people not rise up and demand that their voices be heard? That's what history will ask, if we should have a history. And that's what I'm giving you today, this May 8th, as a gift to you from my brother Jerome. A view of the future today, right here on the Savage Nation. So don't just look at World War II and feel victorious. Look at the war your country is in right now and ask yourself where we are and why we are here.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282.
Thank God he lost, but, don't count your blessings so fast. It's all a sham. There's very little difference between the Labour Party in England and the Tory Party in England, and I'll prove it in one sentence. Take a guess who advised Cameron on how he could win the election. Obama's campaign manager, Jim Messina. What does that tell you? If Obama's political advisor, Jim Messina, is getting credit for leading conservative British Prime Minister David Cameron to a victory, what does it tell you about David Cameron? It tells you it's all rigged. It tells you there's no difference in the West between one side and the other with regard to most issues. Certainly there are fine details that separate the two. But if Axelrod is representing the Labour Party in advising them, and he loses. And Jim Messina, who he calls his brother, advised the other guy. It tells you the same scam that's going on in America is going on in England. Moreover, what the hell are these guys doing in England to begin with? What do they need these creeps to go over there for and mess up the English elections? There's only one good note coming out of England. I want you to hear it in clip 2. This is the Labour Party, the Ed Miliband, who was defeated. Listen to what he said in clip 2.
This has clearly been a very disappointing and difficult night for the Labour Party.
Thank God.
We haven't made the gains we wanted in England and Wales, and in Scotland, we've seen a surge of nationalism overwhelm our party.
Did you hear the word nationalism? Who in America who has been calling for a nationalist party? Michael Savage. Who has told you that a nationalist party could win after a certain number of years in America? Michael Savage. Who has defined his radio career by the 3 words, borders, language, and culture? Michael Savage. But here's the good news. In England, when a party leader is defeated, he resigns out of shame. I want you to listen to 3, and you'll hear what a real democracy sounds like in clip 3.
Britain needs a strong Labour Party. Britain needs a Labour Party that can rebuild after this defeat so we can have a government that stands up for working people again. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party. So I'm tendering my resignation, taking effect after this afternoon's commemoration of VE Day at the Cenotaph. I want to do so straight away because the party needs to have an open and honest debate about the right way forward without constraint.
So he resigned. He resigned because he lost. Now, in America, we had an election in November. It was a landslide against Obama's communist, socialist, Islamist policies. And instead of resigning, as he should have, you know what he did? He told us to drop dead. He doubled down, then he tripled down on his left-wing fanaticism. So don't fool yourself for 1 minute. The left wing in this country is a broken wing. America has rejected that broken wing. America has said no to that broken wing over and over again. But this small band of fanatics who have destroyed the Democrat Party, the same small band of fanatics who dominate the American media, want you to believe that they are the majority. They're not the majority. They're a tiny minority. No one in the media has more at stake in what happened in the UK in the media than me. Because remember, I'm the only member of the media, I'm proud to tell you, still banned from entering England. And I told you the story. The definitive fight for free speech is me. And how one man stood firm against an entire government to free my name from a list of murderers and terrorists. And I've never freed my name because of Gordon Brown and the scum in the Labour Party. So thank God at least the Labour Party didn't win. But Cameron, who had promised people who knew me he'd take my name off the list, shamed himself by not doing so. You know what I'm saying? It's a huge scandal in England. And what's going on in America is very, very near and dear to my heart because of what went on in England. And I know an awful lot about free speech. And I want to make a side note. No one in the American media, save one person, came to my defense. I think it was only Laura Ingraham on radio who came to my aid. Not the big mouth Rush Limbaugh, the great conservative. He made believe it didn't happen. Because if it's not about him and if he can't capitalize on it in some way or make it part of his show, it's of no interest to him. He didn't help me. Certainly Hannity didn't say a word. O'Reilly didn't say a word. No one on Fox News came to my aid. But the preface of the book says the savage fight against censorship. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that funny? Savage was fighting against censorship in England. And it's an important story. We can talk about that as well. Banned in Britain, Michael Savage beating the liberal blacklist. Well, I never beat it. I'm still on it. We can talk about Barack Obama's political advisor, Jim Messina, getting credit for leading conservative British Prime Minister David Cameron to an overwhelming victory. You get that one? There are many other topics. Do you feel the gang problem in America is better or worse under Obama? Do you feel any speech should have severe limits? Do you think Pamela Geller should get FBI protection or Secret Service? Of course she should. But they threw her to the wolves. The NYPD said that she's on a hit list. And the FBI says, you know what? Screw her. She got what she deserved. And there's something else you have to know. The FBI said they overlooked